So in this video, we're going to continue our talk on some of the fundamentals of geometry. And we're going to talk about two formulas that are used again and again and again all throughout the curriculum. And those are going to be the distance formula and the midpoint formula. So the first thing I'm going to do is give you the general form of the formulas. We'll talk about how to use them, and then I'll even give you a couple of shortcuts at the end. So for the distance formula, this is if I want to find the distance between 2 points on a graph, or if I want to find the length of a line segment on a graph. Any of those. The distance is equal to the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Okay, so if we want to find the length of segment AB here, or the distance between points A and B, first thing I'm going to do is just kind of label the points here. This is going to be the point -8, 6, and this over here is the point 7, -2. And what that does, that gives us our x1, which is -8, and our y1, or sorry, our x2 rather, which is +7. And we also have our y1 and y2. Okay, so if we go ahead and plug these into our formula here, the distance is equal to the square root, and x2 is 7. We have 7 minus a -8 squared plus, and we're going to have -2 minus 6 squared. And as we try to simplify that, we're going to get the square root of 15 squared plus a -8 squared. So that's going to be the square root of 15 squared is 225 plus 64. It's the square root of 289. So that right there is the square root of 289. If we actually just plug that in the calculator and simplify it, it comes out to be 17. So the distance, or the length of that line, is going to be 17 units. Okay. Another way that we could do the same thing is to simply use Pythagorean theorem. Anytime we have a segment on a graph, especially if it's a diagonal one, we can really just use Pythagorean theorem and create a right triangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make what's basically called a slope triangle, and I'm just going to draw these dotted lines in right here so that I now have this nice right triangle here. And I can see that, all right, the rise right here, this distance from this red dotted line right here is going to be from 6 down to -2, where I can just kind of count the boxes here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is going to have a length of 8 units. And if I count this one right here along the bottom, that's going to be 15 units long. And if I use Pythagorean theorem, which hopefully you all know is a squared plus b squared equals c squared, that means I'm just going to get 8 squared plus 15 squared is equal to c squared. And if I do this out, I'm going to get the same thing. 64 plus 225 equals c squared. So I get 289 is equal to c squared. And if I take a square root of both sides, I'm going to get 17 is equal to c. So I can do it using Pythagorean theorem as well, which, you know, in a lot of cases, and most students think that the Pythagorean theorem way is much easier than remembering the distance formula. For whatever reason, well, for obvious reasons, I guess, the Pythagorean theorem is much easier to remember. So if you don't remember the distance formula, you can always kind of create this triangle right here and figure out what it's going to be just using Pythagorean theorem. For the midpoint formula, the general form is going to be this. It's going to be x1 plus x2 divided by 2. That's going to give you your x value. And the y value is going to be y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the x values, add them together, and divide by 2. Take the y values, add them together, and divide by 2. And that's going to be my midpoint. So if I try that over here for AB here, that's going to be -8 plus 7 divided by 2. That's going to give me my x value. And if I do 6 plus a -2 divided by 2, that's going to give me my y value. So negative 8 plus 7 is going to be a negative 1, so I'm going to get a negative 1 over 2. 6 plus negative 2 is going to be a positive 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So negative 1/2 comma 2, that's my midpoint. If we go over to our segment over here and we label it, that's going to be about right there, negative 1/2 comma positive 2. And we'll call that point M. Okay, and so really all we did to find the midpoint was we took the average of the x values and the average of the y values. That's all this is telling you to do. So again, if you don't remember how to write out the midpoint formula, just remember all you're doing is taking the average of each number, the average x value and the average y value. Just add them together and divide by 2. Okay, I hope this video helps. Again, it's tough to remember some of these formulas sometimes, so it's nice to have those shortcuts there. So feel free to use them, and I'll see you in the next video.